In the previous chapter, Joo-Tong's crimson wave destroyed the mystical heaven sect and moved toward Joo-Fan's group. Joo-Fan created 3 void walls to block it. The first 2 shattered, but the third held, though barely. Everyone watched in fear, hoping it would last. Let's begin the chapter. A sharp tearing sound echoed as Joo-Fan's last void wall shuddered, about to give way completely. The monstrous red wave was poised to strike. Around him, the demon-scheming sect team felt their blood run cold, faces grim, hearts pounding. In their chests, they desperately braced themselves, using every last bit of their power to survive. Then, a deafening bam. Joo-Fan's third and final void wall finally shattered. A collective gasp went up from the group as they braced for the inevitable. The red wave surged forward, rushing towards them with terrifying speed. But then, just as it was about to engulf them, it faltered. It wavered, and then, impossibly, it simply vanished. Joo-Tong's terrifying power, that dreadful vibration, wave, never touched them. Disbelief turned to elation in an instant. They stared at each other, stunned for a heartbeat, before a wave of joyous relief washed over them. Huh. Joo-Fan breathed out, a long, shaky exhale. The kid's vibration, wave, it's like a shock wave. My void wall used separated spaces, layers of dimensions, to weaken its power. They're mutually exclusive in a way. He let out a longer breath, relief evident in his voice. Otherwise, facing that kind of intense vibration directly, even an ethereal stage expert would be gravely wounded if not outright killed. The others nodded, relief and exhilaration bubbling up within them. They had just stared death in the face and blinked. Venerable Bai, grinning widely, gave Joo-Fan a hearty thumbs up. Steward Zuo, you truly understand your son best. Anyone else would have been annihilated. Only you could withstand that. You are his father after all. Ha ha ha. Laughter erupted, echoing their shared relief and admiration. Ha ha ha. Joo-Fan chuckled, shaking his head. Don't exaggerate. I'm vastly weaker than my kid. It's only because we were so far away, and because Sanzi wasn't targeting us directly, that I could block it. Joo-Fan sighed, a hint of weariness in his voice. Now, do you understand why I was so reluctant to bring him out? Because that brat, he loses himself in the moment just like a child. The others nodded again, understanding dawning on their faces. They could now truly feel Joo-Fan's burden. Such immense, destructive power, wielded by a child so impulsive. It was a danger not just to enemies, but to everyone around him. It was now clear why Joo-Fan had resisted bringing Joo-Tong along, only relenting under pressure from the Heavenly Cycle Elders. My worry now is that he might have just destroyed Mystical Heaven Sect entirely with that move. Joo-Fan frowned, another sigh escaping him. How are we going to explain this to Double Dragon Manor? He thought aloud, his brow furrowed in concern. With sacred beast pride, they never hold back. Ever since young Sanzi grasped the concept of being a Keelan, he's been going further and further down this path of a beast king. Just moments ago, the enemy was clearly defeated, utterly crushed. But still, Sanzi had to unleash that overwhelming display of power, as if to scream to the world that he was the strongest, the best. He hadn't spared a single thought for the consequences. This, Joo-Fan mused, was the fundamental difference between beasts and humans. Beasts were driven by raw power, by instinct. Humans, however, were cunning, adaptable, able to turn weakness into strength, defeat into victory. Young Sanzi, a Keelan's son, naturally followed the beast's way, but thrusting him into the human world, it was far from a sensible idea. If he, Joo-Fan, his godfather, had faltered even for a moment, he would have perished alongside their enemies. Shaking his head, Joo-Fan sighed again, heavy with worry. Then, Fiend Yang spoke, his voice shaken, almost trembling. Joo-Fan. Look over there. He pointed, his hand unsteady. Your son. He didn't just ruin Mystical Heaven's sect. He obliterated it. There's barely anything left. He really is an ender. For crying out loud, what kind of monsters is your clan made of? Each one is worse than the last. The father dominated Double Dragon Gathering, and the son stomps a sect? This is unnatural. The rest of the group turned to look, following Fiend Yang's horrified gaze, their breath caught in their throats. They stared, mouths agape, at the scene before them. Gusan Tong was still floating in the sky, radiating an air of supreme power, looking down on everything with childish arrogance. But when they turned their eyes to Mystical Heaven sect, the once beautiful landscape was now a wasteland of rubble. Corpses lay scattered everywhere, strewn amongst the debris. Sobbing cries echoed through the devastation, and blood seeped from every corner, painting the scene in gruesome detail. It was hell on earth, without question. Han Qianying and Shui Ruohua turned away, tears welling up in their eyes. This had been their home. Chu Qingcheng, too, though her time there was shorter, couldn't bear to look. "Dad, Mom, I mowed them down good," Gusan Tong chirped, a wide, innocent smile on his face as he zipped towards them through the air. And it wasn't even half an hour. The others were so profoundly disturbed they couldn't even meet his gaze. What kind of child can casually reduce a lower 3 sect to utter ruin? Fiend Yang felt a cold dread creep up his spine, remembering the child's earlier annoyance with him. With any other whining child, Fiend Yang would have teased them mercilessly, but not young Sanzi. He didn't have it in him to even consider it. It was far, far better to maintain a very safe distance. If that terrifying temper flared, it wouldn't just be whining and tears. It would be blood and gore. Looking at the horrific aftermath, the ground littered with corpses and the wounded, Fiend Yang was consumed by utter regret. Am I really so bored that I thought rubbing a kid's head was a good idea? Joo-Fan surveyed the devastation around them, then turned to Gusan Tong, a forced smile on his face. "Young Sanzi, you did wonderfully. Leave the rest to me now. You don't need to do anything else." "Sure." Young Sanzi bobbed his head enthusiastically, like the most obedient child imaginable, giggling with innocent delight. But those around him, they exchanged uneasy glances. Who in their right mind would ever believe that pure smile? Seeing the bloody, chaotic scene, Venerable Qi spoke, his voice somber. "Steward Zhuo, this isn't going to be easy to resolve. We need an incredibly compelling reason for all of this, a reason strong enough to make Double Dragon Manor back down, even if they come looking for answers. I know that." Joo-Fan's eyes gleamed with a sudden intensity. "Find sect leader. Xuan and Xuan Xiaoyu. Find them fast. They are our only hope of getting out of this mess cleanly." None of the others truly understood what Joo-Fan was planning, but they trusted him implicitly. "Understood," they replied in unison. Immediately, they began their search, fanning out across the ruined sect. Venerable Qi and Venerable Bai exchanged, a knowing look, a grim smile playing on their lips. Crash! From beneath a mountain of rubble, sect leader Xuan clawed his way out, coughing and spitting blood. He had no time to assess his own injuries, for the rubble beside him shifted again. Xuan Xiaoyu, pale as death, dragged himself free. His 9th grade spiritual armor, once gleaming and protective, was now shattered, broken in two, dangling uselessly. From his body, thank heavens, that 9th grade spiritual armor. It saved his life. Sect leader Xuan reached out, trembling, and sent soul power into Xuan Xiaoyu, checking for any signs of life. Relief flooded him as he felt a faint pulse. He laughed, a choked, unsteady sound of joy. "Xiaoyu! Xiaoyu! I'm so grateful you're alive!" Xuan Xiaoyu's eyelids fluttered open. He saw his father's face, blurry and streaked with blood. Then, The full horror of their situation crashed back upon him. He gasped, his voice weak. "Dad! Joo-Fan! He destroyed our sect! We can't let him get away with this!" "Don't worry, my son." Sect leader Xuan's face hardened, his eyes blazing with hatred. "I swear to you I will make sure he is torn apart for what he has done." Xuan Xiaoyu managed a weak, bitter smile. "Good, Joo-Fan. I will never let you and junior sister Qingcheng be happy together. Ha ha ha. You can't even protect yourself, young Master Xuan." A mocking voice cut through the air, cold and sharp. "And yet, you still have the luxury to worry about Qingcheng and my happiness? Why, thank you for your concern." Xuan Xiaoyu's words died in his throat. Sect leader Xuan's head snapped up. Joo-Fan stood before them, a sinister smile twisting his lips. The girls, Chu Qingcheng, Han Qianying, and Shui Ruohua, stood silently behind him. "Sect leader." Xuan spat, the blood turning to spittle as it hit the ground. "Joo-Fan, you demon fiend! You destroyed my sect, and you dare to show your face here?" "Why wouldn't I?" Joo-Fan raised a mocking eyebrow. "In your heavily wounded state, what exactly can you possibly do to me?" He gestured around at the devastation. "Mystical heaven sect's experts are either dead or wounded. Even you, sect leader Xuan, are helpless to defend yourself. So why the high and mighty act?" "You..." Sect leader Xuan choked with fury, but the rage only brought on another violent cough, splattering more blood onto his robes. Joo-Fan simply shrugged, his smile widening cruelly. "See, you have no power left. Your life, your very survival is now in my hands. Let's be perfectly honest here. Your death or survival, it's entirely at my whim. You have absolutely no choice in the matter." Sect leader. Xuan fell silent, his face a mask of bitter rage and humiliation. He bit down hard on, his lip drawing blood, utter crushing humiliation, a sect leader reduced to this. He had never in his life been in such a position, so utterly powerless. Taunted, mocked by his enemy, with no recourse, no defense, because he knew with a sickening certainty that every word Joo-Fan spoke was the absolute truth. He was powerless. The demon scheming sect team watched on, grins spreading across their faces. Han Qianying and the girls, however, merely sighed, a mixture of pity and sorrow in their eyes. The once mighty mystical heaven sect had reaped what it sowed, reduced to nothing but rubble and despair. "Well then, sect leader Xuan." Joo-Fan leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous purr. "Do you want to live or die?"